Okay, now that we have successfully started using the pen tool, we're going to create a design using our pen tool, and we're going to introduce layers to this as well. Once we are done with this design, we're then going to save it, and you're going to submit the design. We're also going to save it, and we're going to use it for our next lesson when we start to talk about how to create colors and gradients and things like that. Okay, but first let's look at what we're going to be doing. So I pulled up here some examples of mandalas. So mandalas are radial patterns that are symmetrical, and what makes them radial is if you look at the pattern, I'm going to enlarge this one here. If I start in the middle and I draw a straight line out to this point here, then I start in the middle and draw a straight line out to this point, that wedge in there, if you look at the pattern in that wedge, you'll see that it's repeated in the next wedge. So each wedge would go from the point of this to the next point and then back to the middle. So it's like a pie slice. And the design within that pie slice is the same as you go all the way around the design. Okay, some designs have more slices than others. So if you look at this one, okay, each slice would go from the middle out to the point of here and then out to the middle of the point of here. So if you just count the number of high points around the outside of the design, that's how many slices you have. So you're going to create a design, a mandala design, that is just black and white for now. You're just going to create the lines for the design. And then once we start adding color to things, we're going to use our mandalas to do the lesson on how to manipulate colors within Illustrator. So you'll notice in the lesson file, I've given you 3 templates that I've already made up for you so that you don't really have to worry about how many and how to divide it and everything. So there's one with 8. There's concentric circles as kind of guidelines going towards the middle. And then with this one, there's 8 divisions with each one. There's the 12 division option and then an 18 option. The example that I've already started making here deals with the 18 option. And I've started by creating small pieces, but I'll start over on a blank one for you. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my template, and I'm going to recreate this design that you see here and then start to build out from there. So I'm going to start with the 18 template. I'm going to change my board to Essentials Classic so we get the same look that we've had so far, because a lot of the things I'm going to be working with are over here. So when we talk about layers, we're going to go in here and you have the template layer, which is 18 grid or 12 grid or 8 grid. Okay, and you'll notice that that has a little lock on here. We need to keep that lock on there so that we don't accidentally move any of the grid lines that are on here. Okay. Layer 2 would be where we'd start drawing our design. Okay, so if I select this one, you'll notice I can't really do anything. If I choose my pen tool, it doesn't allow me to. If I go to layer 2, which is unlocked, it should allow me to create lines. There we go. So I add layer 3. Okay, layer 3 is going to allow me to start to create my design on here. You'll notice layer 2 has the design that I already started. Okay, so I'm going to hide layer 2 so that I'm not worrying about it, and then layer 3 is the layer that we're going to start working in. So whenever I create a design, if I create it on layer 3, all of my outlines, you'll notice, will be green. Okay, so as I start to create that, it'll be green. If I add a new layer, that layer will then be assigned a new color. Okay, when we do this, each object that you put in each layer, the way the layers are arranged depends on what object is in front of the other. I will look at that more closely as we move on. So we're going to go back to layer 3. I'm just going to minimize this so it's not in the way, and I am going to zoom in on the middle. So my first item my first piece that I want to do is I'm going to anchor it in my middle. So I'm going to start there. I'm going to go out to here, and I'm going to create my arc. Okay, once I've created my arc, now I can go back and I can try and recreate it on the other side like we learned to do, where I bring this back down, I start here and then I go back to here. Or what I can do is I can select so that I just have that 1/2 a piece. I'm going to go over here to my fill. You'll notice that my grid lines disappear. That's because right now I have a fill on. So I'm going to take my fill off so that I can see through my objects, and they're just an outline. So with that selected, I'm going to go up to Object, Transform, and I am going to reflect, and I'm going to reflect vertically. Let's move this here. Okay, and ideally it would be the same thing. You'd have the same arc in both instances, and that would create, it would allow me to create this. What I could also do is I could get on here, press my Alt key like we did before, and create a copy. Object, Transform, Reflect. Okay, then I can turn that and bring it back in here so that it's anchored. Oops. And then rotate it until they're joined back up. Okay, what I really want to do though is I want this to be a whole shape. So I'm going to bring my pen tool back. I'm going to go back a few steps to where my pen tool is still active. Okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to arc this out. Bring it back. Then I'm going to bring this back here. And I'm going to have to stretch this out in order to get the same arc. I'm going to have to stretch it out a lot further because I'm doing it from the other side. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to line up points so that this point right here is where my line starts to curve back. So if I go along here and I get that arc in there, that'll give me a shape that's pretty symmetrical. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my fill off so that I can see it, and choose my selection tool and click off it. So now I have this shape. Okay, it's pretty symmetrical. It's pretty much the same on both sides. I'm going to take this, and if we have 9 divisions in here for 180 degrees, which would be from this flat line all the way around to this flat line, every time I rotate this, I'm going to rotate it 20 degrees. Okay, and that'll create an overlap. Oops. Where there's one on each one of these. Okay, if I wanted one for every other one, I'd do it every 40 degrees. So what I'll do is I'll go to Object, Transform, Rotate. We'll do every 40 degrees for this one. Okay, if I hit Preview, it shows me that I'm copying it that way. And I hit Copy, and it gives me a second one. So now I can take this, and I can anchor it to the middle, get it along those same anchor points. All right, so the tip is on this same arc, and then my middle point would be anchored in there. I'm going to go to Object, Transform, Rotate, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this so that we have this pattern that starts to go all the way around. Okay. It's a quick way of creating moving our pattern and filling out our pattern without having to draw every line individually, kind of like what we did with the robot, where we copied objects so that we didn't have to recreate them every time. Now we're going to rotate them so that they fit within our guide that we're trying to create here. and that gives me my last one in this grouping. Okay, so now that I have that done, what I can start to do is I can do bigger ones that come out in between. I can start a new pattern that's in between. I want to do this so it looks a little bit more like this one. I know it's not quite as pointed as this one, but where I have those small ones in between the larger ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back here, I'm going to select one, I'm going to rotate it. This time I'm only going to rotate it 20 degrees though. Okay, and then I'm going to create a copy, and what that'll do is it'll give me a bigger one that I can then anchor in here. But because I want a smaller one, now I'm going to take this and I'm just going to shrink my form down. Okay, and then I can move it. Oh, I'll need to rotate it just a little. I can move it into place. Okay, and then I can go around and I can copy this all the way around again. All right. What you'll notice is happening in my layers is if I click on this arrow in layer 3, you'll see each individual piece is broken down here. So with this new one selected, it shows me that it's that one right there. And it's second because I made it off the first one. But if I want it behind, I can just take this and drag it down, and now it would be behind the other ones. So if I were to take this one and this one, and I were to fill them in, it would hide the other lines from here. If I were to take this and move it up above both of those in this order, you'll notice the lines are above it. Okay, so for right now, we're going to keep it below. All right, and I'm going to continue to create these all the way around. I'll need to go back to 40 degrees for this, and then I hit copy, and that allows me to start to place it. Okay, now as I start to place these, they're going to fill in. So you'll notice this one is right on top of the previous one, but they'll still be behind all of these. Okay. So now all of these are placed behind all of my larger ones. So I'm going to go in and I want those. I can do this and take my fill out so that I can see every single line in there. For confusion's sake, it may be easier just to fill in the outer ones so that you can see what exactly your pattern is going to look like as you move stuff in front or behind. And you could do it the opposite way. It kind of depends on the design of your pattern. You don't have to design the same pattern I design. In fact, I encourage you to design your own pattern and come up with your own ideas. In this instance, I don't want to see a copy of what I've already done. Okay, so now that is my first layer of design. Okay, if I were to bring this up, that adds another element. I can then move this behind this one. Okay, so I have a whole other set in there if I wanted to. Okay, so for right now, I'm going to move that up. I'm going to hide that one. Right. So now I'm going to create a new layer. Right. And to make sure I don't move any of this stuff, I'm actually going to lock it in place. And if I want to be able to create something through the middle without worrying about this, I can always click on this little eye. And what that does is it hides what's there. Okay. So I'm going to keep it there for now so that I kind of have an idea of what I'm working with here. So now I'm going to start with my pen tool on this anchor point. Okay. And I'm going to, if I bring it all the way across and then drag, I can create an arc between those two that has its high point there. Okay. The downside of creating an arc just in here is to complete it, to fill it, it just fills across, right? So I actually want to click here so that I am back to straight lines. I'm going to click in the middle, and then I'm going to click back out to this anchor point so I create a wedge. And now I'm going to mirror this wedge the same way I mirrored the other. So I'm going to choose my selection tool. I'm actually going to hide my layer underneath it so that I can make this go all the way around. But first I want to this arc isn't very even, so I'm going to zoom in. What I can do is in my pen tool menu, if I click on this and I hold it, I can come down to anchor point tool. And what that allows me to do is to come into this, and I can grab this handle and I can move my arc. So if I want my arc to be less, I can do that and adjust it. I could grab this down here and I could totally mess with everything that's in here. I can make that bump out like that. I can bring it back like this. You know, and twist these around if I wanted to. Okay, but I don't really want to do that. I just want to change my arc a little bit. So I can move this and grab this handle, move my arc down. You know, that would give me a straight line. I can move it up. I can extend my arc. Okay, so that I have a much higher one. And what would that look like with this? It would look something like that. Okay, so you can do all kinds of different things to readjust this. The other thing you could do is you can add anchor points to it. So I'm going to hide this again. Oops, I'm going to hide this again. And I'm going to come over to my pen tool menu and I'm going to go to add anchor points. Select this. I'm going to go to my pen tool. I'm going to go to add anchor points. And I can come in here and I can add an anchor point here. I could add one here. And then I would be able to grab this tool and I could adjust my arc even further. I could make it come out like this. So you can really create some awkward shapes in this. Adjusting back and forth, adding anchor points and taking them. So if I don't really like this, what happens when I adjust these, I can go to delete anchor point. I can delete this and I can delete this. Okay, and now I'm back to what I had earlier. So I can grab this. We'll just make this taller. Okay. Now doing what I did before, I'm going to transform, rotate, and I'm just going to copy. That should give me a new one. Okay, so I have this selected. Not really sure what it did. There we go. Take this and I can put it in there, and it lines it up pretty well next to it. Okay, I may need to key in just to make sure. The grid may be a little bit off, but it's on for the most part. Okay, and then I do that all the way around, and then I bring my layers back so I can kind of see what it starts to look like as I build out. So as you're building your mandala, what I'd like to see is you create some patterns that come out further. Some other things that you can do in the examples that I showed you, do some research, look up patterns, look up designs. You can do some line stuff in here. If I really wanted to, I could come in, and because this is locked, it's not really going to do anything. I can grab my pen tool, I can start here, I can bring a line out to here, right? And then then I divide my space a little bit, right? It won't divide when we fill colors unless we create these into two separate shapes. Unless I do this and take this, I bring it down here, okay? It won't really divide this into multiple shapes, right? It'll just create some lines for pattern and stuff. So play around with it, see, look at some different patterns and designs that you can incorporate into yours, and then remember to fill up most of the page with your pattern. And it's going to be a lot of copying and rotating and things like that, but once this is all done, we'll start to play with color and how to fill these in and create a pattern that's as colorful as some of the examples I showed you. Okay, so after you complete your line drawing on your mandala with your pen tool and your line segment tools, save that. You'll submit that through Schoology, and then we'll move on to playing with color. All right.